fully aware that I'm ultimately responsible for the situation that has harmed the university as a whole and our Department of Athletics and our football program. I want to apologize to Buckeye Nation. I followed my heart, not my head. I fell short in pursuing full information because at each juncture, I gave Zach Smith the benefit of the doubt. As I reflect, my loyalty to his grandfather, Earl Bruce, who was my mentor and like a father to me, likely impacted how I treated Zach over the years.
And here it is. This is Sports Nightly. My name is Eric Halbert. That, of course, Urban Meyer addressing the world for the first time since he was put on administrative leave. The Buckeye coach suspended for 3 games. His boss, AD Gene Smith, for over 2 weeks, both without pay. Now, joining us off the top, 2 guys who have worked the Buckeye beat for years, BCSN's Mark Kuntz and Letterman Rose, Jeremy Birmingham. Fellas, an interesting presser after 10 hours of deliberation.
Interesting is the key word. As Jeremy, we had over 11 hours of deliberations between the trustees and the board of trustees, and we heard a lot of inter-party rankling, if you will, before they finally came to this decision. Urban Meyer suspended for 3 additional weeks because he's effectively already been suspended for 3 weeks. He still not have any contact with the team until after that first game against Oregon State. Won't be able to coach against Rutgers. Won't be able to coach against Texas Christian, that big game down in Dallas. Gene Smith suspended without pay for basically 3 weeks as well.
Yeah, I mean, we spent all day today waiting and watching and looking for any sign of what was actually going on in Columbus. At the end of the day, there was a lot of discussion that maybe it was the president, Michael Drake, against a few of the Board of Trustees members who wanted Urban Meyer to be fully reinstated immediately. There was some talk that there was some pushback from Meyer about any suspension. Whatever happened, it boiled down to what we got, which is 3 more weeks for Urban Meyer, 3 weeks for Gene Smith, and a national media that has a lot more questions still than answers. And I think that that's basically what we should have expected. There is no perfect response in this situation. I don't think anybody who thought 3 weeks ago that Meyer was going to be fine had their mind changed by what happened today, or anybody who thought he should have been fired has had their opinions changed. I think ultimately what we saw today was an attempt from the Ohio State Board of Trustees and the Ohio State president to find a happy medium, and I don't know if they did.
I don't know if they would be able to find a happy medium. The key findings are that Urban Meyer and Gene Smith did not condone or cover up any domestic violence allegations, but simply they didn't do enough, in Ohio State's Board of Trustees' opinion, to, I don't want to say, they didn't do enough, basically.
Yeah, that sort of subjective didn't do enough is a tricky thing to dive into, if you ask me. I don't know how you expect a football coach, whether it's Urban Meyer or Jim Harbaugh or Brian Kelly or anybody around the country, to be more responsible in serious allegations, domestic abuse allegations, than law enforcement or anyone else. But we live in a time when football is king, especially on campuses like Ohio State, and Urban Meyer is in charge of that program, and because of that, he's the guy that is going to be held responsible in some way. And I think that the Buckeyes were forced today to acknowledge that Gene Smith really is the one that dropped the ball here. And I think that what you'll find from a lot of Ohio State fans is that they felt Meyer's suspension is a little bit overkill at this point, but the Gene Smith maybe got off light. And I think that there's an interesting juxtaposition of those two concepts between Buckeye fans and national media.
And certainly those in the national media, the perception was this might just be a whitewash, but we've got an investigation that lasted 2 weeks, had over 40 witnesses, several tens of thousands of documents reviewed, and then, as we said, close to 11 hours of deliberation today. So this wasn't a whitewash. This wasn't something they just quickly made up their mind on.
If $500,000 of state money went into this investigation, say what you will about the government spending, but that's a lot of money to go into something that people believed was just going to be predetermined. And I don't think that was the case at all. I think that early in the week we saw Ohio State media starting to report about potentially no further suspension for Urban Meyer. That was pushed back against by national media and social media. And I think ultimately what we saw here was the Buckeyes went and changed it and said, hey, we're gonna do what's best for the program. I don't think that really is what happened. I think that, again, they found a happy medium.
And Jeremy, we talked about the top of the show. Urban Meyer suspended for the first 3 games, so we now know what the punishment is going forward. Ryan Day will continue as the interim head coach. Ryan Day will be the coach game day against Oregon State, will be the coach against both Rutgers and at TCU. Last Saturday, you were down at practice for Ohio State. Ryan Day in control. Did it seem any different without Urban Meyer there?
You know, I actually made this comment to my coworker Austin Ward following practice on Saturday that if you didn't know Urban Meyer wasn't there, you wouldn't know Urban Meyer wasn't there based on the way that the Buckeyes handled their business on Saturday. They were energetic, they were active. The coaches around the program were doing what they would normally do if Urban was there. The only difference was there wasn't Urban Meyer out in front of them. You know, the Buckeyes are one of the programs in the country that are the best of the best. And with that, they have some of the best coaches in the country, the coaches that are most capable of handling this sort of madness. And you don't take a job at Ohio State if you're not able to handle a circus. And what we saw from the Buckeyes, and I saw Joey Galloway, a former Buckeye receiver, echoed that today, that he hasn't noticed anything different about Ohio State in his times that he's been around the program in the last few weeks. And I think that Ryan Day, even though he's young, with Kevin Wilson, a former head coach, and Greg Schiano around him, he's got some real veterans to help guide him through these next few weeks. And I think that's why, even though Urban Meyer will be back on the sideline for practices throughout the
After the Oregon
State game.
Yeah.
You know, Ryan's going to have to make those decisions on game day. So I think he's a right guy to do it.
Yeah, and that's something that Urban touched on today, that he thinks he has faith in his staff that they'll be able to overcome this.